In this episode of Laura Meets, we talk to award-winning children's author Marie Louise Fitzpatrick about the power of storytelling for children. So Marie Louise, you knew you wanted to be an artist and a storyteller from quite a young age, didn't you?
Yes, I think I was 4 when I first announced that I was going to be an artist when I grew up, and never changed my mind. Before that I wanted to be a nurse, but that was gone. Artist all the way through. And my parents were very supportive, though they would point out, you're never going to make any money. And I'd say I didn't care, and I stuck with it.
Stuck with it.
Yeah.
Were you like my 2-year-old's doing now, illustrating on walls when you were little, or were you sticking to paper?
I did have one moment when myself and my sister went into the pantry and drew all over the walls, and I think it's probably still there. But no, a lot of paper. I was lucky my dad worked in the local paper mills in Clondalkin, so I had a never-ending supply of scrap paper, which I used all the time. Probably the most important thing for kids that are really interested in art and drawing is constant supply paper.
What would have been the books you enjoyed reading when you were growing up?
I have 2 older sisters, so there were books in the house from them already. And my parents were big readers, and they wanted us to be readers. And they had gotten us a gorgeous supply of picture books, which back in the 60s were quite unusual in Ireland. I think we had a great, gorgeous selection of picture books, which we grew up on. And then obviously, as I got older, I was moving into my sister's collection of whatever novels they were reading. So there were hundreds of books in the house, and we had library cards, and we had school library cards, so books. And if we said we'd nothing to read, it hurt my parents, and they would immediately bring us to the shops or the library to get some.
The worst thing you could possibly say.
Shoes.
We have nothing to read.
Shoes and books. That was their priorities in life.
The likes of Enid Blyton, I know when I was little, I actually thought I lived up the faraway tree. That's literally what I used to think. And now I go to tell my children stories and I can't think of things to say. My imagination won't extend to them. What does it take to actually have that active imagination?
I was always the kid that made up the games that we played as children. So that was my main role as a small child, was to decide what we were playing today. And I would have been writing stories at a fairly young age too, and drawing every day. So I was constantly exercising my imagination in that way, which means that by the time I was 20, I had a lot of learning done, a lot of practice of using my imagination to create things, because I was creating every day in some way.
I suppose people channel their imagination in different ways though, don't they?
Yes, I think people are inclined to think that if you have an imagination, you're going to become an artist or a writer. But if people are making architecture, they're using their imagination. If people are working in media like you are, you're trying to put yourself in my shoes to figure out what kind of questions to ask me. That's using your imagination. So every job, people are using their imagination in some way to make it work better.
Oh, good. I always thought I was extremely uncreative. Thank you for that. So in these HP mini big books, the children get to design their own story and be an ogre or a superhero or even go planet hopping. This is a nice idea for getting the imagination working, isn't it? It's lots of fun.
Yeah, and I think it'd be a good leaping off point for making up their own stories from scratch. They get the taste of it and then try working up their own story in their head. They don't need to write it down. Small children, that's way too much work. It's too like school. But telling it verbally or drawing a picture and telling you what the story is in the picture, children are making up stuff all the time. We all were using our imagination hugely when we were small. I think the difference with a writer and an illustrator is they go on using it very applied way. Whereas all kids, you only have to be around kids to know they're using their imagination. They're using their imagination when they're playing. They're using it when they're drawing. They'll present you with a scroll and give you some big backstory to what that scroll is as a 2-year-old. Yeah. So kids are using their imagination all the time.
How relevant do you think your personal journeys were as a child in relation to your storytelling?
I would be often. I'm not aware of it until I'm part of the way through the book. It'll suddenly dawn on me what set a story off. So say Izzy and Skunk, I saw my niece being fearful, my niece Anne being fearful about going down a slide, and noticed that she was quite like me that way, that she had to build herself up to do things. And I realised that was me seeing me as a child.
Right.
And so, you know, a book like this is about facing your fears, tiny fears, you know, being afraid of spiders, being afraid of making a mistake, being afraid of falling down when you get up on skates, that kind of thing, the little fears. So just those
You're drawing
memories.
on those from when you're little. This is a silent book, actually, which means it's just pictures and children create their own stories. Have you had some interesting interactions with children over this one?
Yeah, the kids completely get it. They're totally able to follow the story because they're not afraid. Adults are more inclined to be afraid when they pick up something like this. Children, no problem. They read it instantly. I even had a 3-year-old in Canada who astonished me a third of the way through the book. She suddenly said, and then something bad will happen and they'll help each other and they'll be friends. And that's exactly what happens. They project to the end of the story. And she said this and everybody was astonished. There were a lot of adults in the room and they all sort of went, and then she gives this enormous fart and rolled around laughing and the whole room just exploded laughing.
True child style,
Yes.
That's absolutely brilliant. What would you say to parents to actively get their children reading, to encourage them to get into storytelling?
I mean, we all tell stories all the time. We tell stories about, you know, we were on holidays or something that happened to us during the day. And small children, a great way to help them keep memories is to get them to tell the story. If something happened to your child today that stood out, and you get them to tell the story to your partner or the other kids or whatever, and get them to tell it again tomorrow, it'll build a memory. It goes into the memory. So, for instance, I have a very strong memory of being 2.5. I fell off a chair and broke my arm, and I ended up in hospital. And I have multiple memories around that, very clear visual memories around it, because my 2 older sisters would get me to tell that story, the stories over and over again. So I still have those memories locked in, very clear. Obviously, I've probably invented a few things on that I don't know that I have, but it's there.
Lovely. My sisters say, take your foot off the exaggerator, Laura, every time I go to tell a story. So that's their story with me. I'm like, I'm going to
Part
finish.
of the wonderful thing of how stories grow is we realise it'd be funnier if we add on.
And leave books everywhere for children, all around the house. Yeah.
Yes, so they can pick them up and read them at will.
Skip the hassle of buying new ink with HP's Instant Ink, HP's ink subscription service. Your HP printer detects when you need ink, then reorders more, and voila! New ink is delivered straight to your door. Plans start at just $2.99, that's up to 70% savings. And delivery is always included. Plus, upgrade, downgrade, or cancel anytime. Save with Instant Ink today.